Welcome back, friends. As you know, Crazy and as Usual is all about managing the monkeys. What I love about Ell Graniel is that she doesn't just manage her monkeys, she leads her monkeys. You can't imagine how excited I was to hear about how Ell Graniel leads her monkeys. Tell us hi, Elle, and what do you mean by this?
Yeah, what's interesting is when we think about, so over the decades, I've become, a leadership consultant, and somewhere along the line, I can't exactly say when, but I realized, well, why don't I lead the monkeys in my head? Like I'm an expert at leading people in the office, the careers, and it's like, but I've got this whole crew of monkeys chatting in my brain, and none of them fall off and bonk their head like the old childhood song. Like they're just there. And so I started to apply the techniques that I use for interpersonal communications to intrapersonal communications, the voices in your head, which is where the monkeys live.
Absolutely. And the very first pre-reader of my book before I published it said, "What makes you think that the monkeys have to be managed or in any way um, caged? What if we just listen to the monkeys?" So I have a feeling that you and my friend have something in common here. Tell us when the monkeys of self-doubt, I'm not good enough, not smart enough, when they start chattering, what does it mean to lead your monkeys? What is the first thing you do, or what are the three things you do?
hmm So there's a process that I use. I love threes, everything triads, trinity. So it's everything one, two, three.
Amen. Me too. Yeah.
And so the one, two, three is number one, don't ignore it, right? So if you heard it, if it's possible in that very moment, then address it. So basically, if a monkey says to me like, "Oh, this is where you always mess up," and so also then you address it, and if you're able to in that moment, if not, make sure you jot it down or make a voice note or something to later speak to that monkey, and you say, "Okay, I heard what you said. Why did you say that? Why did you feel the need to say that?" And those monkey voices that are running amok and crazy, they're generally old, antiquated trauma dramas that
Mhm.
still run today, 20, 30, 40 years later, in an attempt to protect us from being hurt again,
Yep.
right? Or embarrassed or humiliated. So you ask the monkey, well, first you say, "I heard what you said," right? So, you're recognizing them. And then you say, "Why did you say that?" Because monkeys don't give a whole, thesis. We just get a few sentences,
Yep.
And so then you allow them to tell you what's up. And then basically, step three is you bring them into 2023, now 2024, right? So you say, "Do you realize that it's 2020? We'll just say 2024, and that you've been hanging out in there since 1972 all by yourself? How would you like to join the rest of us with the truth?" And the truth is that, life is amazing. I'm successful. I love what I do. And all of that, you could be sharing it. So it just goes to regular leadership, right? So when people feel seen,
Yeah.
heard, and appreciated, so you do the same with the monkeys.
Yeah.
You recognize that you heard. You say, "I heard you." You ask them why they were saying that, and then you start the conversation with
Right.
them. But
Yeah.
but you're still the leader. They're not leading the
Exactly.
conversation.
You're leading it. One of the major premises that really stood out to me, just in understanding how our brains work. I don't know where it is that it occurs to us that we are supposed to believe every thought that passes through our head, like it's or feel ashamed of it, like it's something that we own. Sometimes thoughts pass through our head that we need to just say, "Well, that's not mine." So you're letting it flow downhill. I love it.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's
and
easier. Why
yeah.
not? It's
Well,
easier.
it is. And when you think about when you're trying to own it and figure it out and wrestle with the monkey, you're exhausted. You have to stop what you're doing to wrestle.
Yes.
And then
Mhm.
you're too tired from that drama to think. So you go have a glass of wine, then you can't work. So it just
Exactly.
evolves from there, right?
Uh-huh.
This is where I want to ask you to talk about what you say on LinkedIn. It's your mission to put an end to quiet quitting, minimal monkeys, and the great resignation. Tell us what you mean. I think a lot of us have preconceived notions about those terms, but I'd like you to explain what you meant by those terms.
Okay, sure. And I want to point out that you just made a Freudian slip. So you said minimal monkeys. It's
I said
minimal,
minimum monkeys instead of minimal Mondays.
which is so perfect, right? For
Yeah,
what we're talking about right now.
monkey minimal Mondays.
So the great, so basically I stole those titles from the media.
Yeah,
They like to label things in a way that will make people read the articles. And the Great Resignation, pretty much the pandemic was the shift of everything. People are like, oh, we do die. And there's just a lot of shifts that happen and are still happening, like
yeah,
how earthquakes have aftershocks. The pandemics is still having aftershocks, so to speak, about how people are thinking about their lives. And so the Great Resignation was people deciding, I'm not going to come back to work.
yeah.
It's killing me, it's soul sucking, all that kind of thing. And then a lot of businesses won't stay virtual, or they won't even do hybrid, and people are like, I don't want that hour commute, all these things, right? And so that tipped off the Great Resignation. And then minimal Mondays is more of kind of a Gen Z approach to thinking that the weekend's not enough time off. And a lot of people bring their work home with them over the weekend. And so instead of having the mindset that Mondays are crazy, like I got to get back in, it's Monday, it's the start of the week, and so the mindset behind minimal Mondays is, let's just do what matters. Let's
Hmm.
just do one thing.
Right.
Let's not multitask. Um, I, and I'm not a, I'm, oh my gosh, when people say you've got to develop your multitasking skills, I get so upset because you cannot multitask, people. You can do
You don't,
several things crappy at one time,
right.
but
Task
you
switching.
cannot multitask. And so that's the idea behind minimal Mondays, right? Is there's no you don't jump into the week frazzled on day one, right?
Right.
Minimal. And so just keeping people wanting to show up, and that's leadership. When you have a great leader, AKA boss, you enjoy what you do because you're seen, heard, and appreciated, and you feel like you matter. And I don't think that's too much to ask from our leaders.
No, not at all. But sometimes it doesn't happen. So, how would you advise someone who has that leader who doesn't quite see you or acknowledge your humanity? And you've got to try to show up with this determination of spirit and do an excellent job, but you're not getting the leadership that you wish you had from the top.
Mhm. And it's like all relationships. For example, a lot of people get divorced and they didn't open the communication because people found out things after the fact that maybe could have been resolved. Now, I know this is easier said than done, but if you can open the channel of communication first and say, I'd like to chat to you about not feeling important here, and this is why.
Yeah.
Give three specific examples. Here I go with the threes again. And just stay on task, stay on point, not get all into the language of the emotions and how other people think in the office. None of that. It's just about you and your leader, your manager, and say, I'm unhappy, and this is why. And then you just sit there and see what happens. And if they defend themselves, then possibly you should start looking for new work, right? If they say a new employment, if they say, thanks for sharing, I had no idea you felt that way. What would you like to see happen? Woo! You've got a great leader who just didn't know you were struggling.
Yeah. It's a really good point. And yeah, I think the hard thing is when you realize you have a leader who is not in your court, and yet, gosh, I've got to keep this job or I've got to find another job. It's mentally hard
Yes.
to make that gap.
And some bosses are not approachable. And
Hmm.
that's part of the angst, right? Like, I can't tell this person how I feel. They don't even have feelings. I don't think they have emotions,
Hmm.
So in that case, it's hard to start that conversation. So I didn't want to, glaze or glean over it by saying it's easy. On occasion, you do have to go one level up
Yeah.
and then say, look, I will have you talk to your supervisor about this. You know what? I cannot, and this is why. And then go to the 1, 2, 3s, right? And so you
Nice.
can either be a trailblazer because a lot of other people would like to do that. You could be a whistleblower, which is also not a favorite term of mine, or you can continue to suffer in silence and count the days to retirement. There I
Which
go.
doesn't sound very life-giving, does it?
No,
How did
no.
you come into this work, Elle?
I came into this work kind of through the back door. So I've been a longtime fitness professional, which the pandemic killed that career,
Yeah.
teaching group fitness classes forever since 1984, give or take, and was a CEC provider. So just motivation, health, fitness. I kid that I can count to 8 in like more ways than the average person because of all leading all those fitness classes. And
Yeah.
then that led to me pursuing motivation, how to talk to people. So that led to my certification in NLP and getting certified with the International Academy of Self-Knowledge to become a leader there. And
Nice.
so then I started my own company, Truespeak. And my tagline is say what you want, the truth is in you. And I specialize in intrapersonal communication because that's where the monkeys live.
Right. Absolutely. And the solution to some of those mental health challenges at work really are in having really healthy conversations. So you're not going home wishing you had said that or
Mm-hmm.
having to apologize for something again. So do
Mm-hmm.
you teach those one-on-one in coaching or in classes, or do you go in and work with teams? How do you usually make that
Well, I
available?
just wrote the book, The Team Whisperer,
Mhm.
Successfully Lead a Cross-Generation Race and Gender Team. So it's my, as you mentioned on my LinkedIn page, to stop, the great resignation. And that's by having good leaders. So it's a program and it can be done online. I have modules, but I prefer to go in because I like to read the body language and the micro expressions and everything. And so it helps entry level to middle managers be more effective leaders because they were just thrown into these positions with the pandemic. Like people died, people quit. Like it was a really rough and scary time for
Yeah,
so many of us. And they're not getting any training. Like
right.
their manager might be a good leader, but they're not giving them the skills. It's like for many of us when we bring home that first baby for people have had that experience, it doesn't come
Yeah.
with a manual,
I know. Isn't
a
it
house.
amazing? You have to take a test to get a driver's license, but they'll hand you a baby at the hospital and say, "See ya, have a good life."
As long as you have a car seat, that's
Well,
all you
when I
need.
had my first baby, and my husband pulled the car around, it was at that moment that we realized we hadn't taken the car seat out of the box yet. It was in the back of the car. So I'm sitting there in the wheelchair holding the infant, and he's trying to install the car seat in the back. You can imagine.
That's such a good story.
Oh boy, that
And so
was funny.
if people want to just work with me on the monkeys specifically, then I do one-on-one. I really, really, I'm a people person. I can do groups and I could scale, but I choose not to because I really like the ripple effect that, so when you throw one rock into a lake, you watch the ripples. So
Mhm.
cool. If you
Yeah,
throw 5 stones or 10 stones, you can't watch all the ripples. It's just a
yeah.
hot mess. So I like working one-on-one with people
I
also.
love that. Good. So the best way for them to contact you is to go to your truespeak.us website?
The best way to contact me, well, I give it to you to put in the show notes. I'm an email person.
Okay,
I'm showing my age at 61.
there you go.
And so let's just start the conversation via email because I'd like to know your thoughts right out of the gate. So my email is info@truespeak.us. So
Okay,
still my website. So if you want to learn more, that's there. And then I send people the success mindset scorecard so that
nice.
they can do some personal reflection first before we chat. Because I really, we're so busy. It's like we want to really make sure we're getting the best of our time together.
Yeah, I love that. Success mindset scorecard. I think if we could all go into Monday with that success mindset scorecard,
Yes.
and thinking about the scorecard of our business and how
Mhm.
we're going to move that along. Boy, what a difference that would make, don't you think?
Absolutely. And it's within our power. We don't have to feel resigned or resentful, because we do have the power to create the environment that we want to be living in.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I love that you emphasize that that power is already right here within us. Yeah.
Mhm.
We're just unlocking it, making friends with the monkeys. Well,
Exactly.
I appreciate the wisdom and insight that you shared, and I hope that people do contact you, access that success mindset scorecard, and get in
Wonderful.
touch with getting those monkeys to be, um, stay in their place. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I love the crazy. I often say I'm crazy busy, and I mean that in a really good way
Yeah.
because it's fun, like your background there, right? The multicolored letters
Huh?
crazy.
Mhm.
It can be fun because the opposite of crazy is boring. Who wants that?
It's so true. Crazy as usual is something that I've said for years every time people ask me how I'm doing. And little did they know I was planning to write a book about with that title all this time. So you're welcome to use my term here because it's true. It's just true of our lives.
I
Thanks for
will.
joining. I appreciate having you.
My pleasure as always, Donna. Looking forward to more time together.
Yes.